It's the early 1980s. Saxophones wail on the radio, swamp water drips off the mossy trees, and teenagers are plotting the kind of pranks that could get them expelled for life. Out of this chaotic mix came a movie that didn't just make audiences laugh, it redefined what a teen comedy could even be. That movie was Porky's. Now, if hearing phrases like Pee-wee's prank or Coach Ballbricker's grip instantly makes you grin, you already know the kind of outrageous ride we're about to take. But what most people don't know is that behind the cheap laughs, wild locker room scenes, and legendary chaos, Porky's has a backstory just as outrageous as the film itself. Here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up.
Number 1.
Most people think Porky's was pure Hollywood fantasy. Wrong. Writer and director Bob Clark pulled directly from his teenage years growing up in Florida during the 1950s. The swamps, the strip club raids, the humiliations, it all came from real stories. Clark once said, "Everything in the movie either happened to me or to someone I knew." So when you're laughing at those outrageous pranks, just remember, some poor teenager in 1950s Florida actually lived it.
Number 2.
Despite being set in steamy Florida, the entire movie was filmed in Canada. Why? Tax breaks. The crew literally hauled in palm trees and fake swamp setups to create the illusion of southern heat. Meanwhile, the cast was freezing in their shorts, pretending it was 90 degrees. If you look closely, some extras are actually shivering. Commitment, right?
Number 3.
With a budget of just around $5 million, nobody expected Porky's to blow up. But it did, earning over $160 million worldwide. That made it one of Canada's biggest box office successes ever. Teenagers flocked to theaters, critics rolled their eyes, and the movie industry realized raunchy teen comedies could be massive.
Number 4.
Executives at 20th Century Fox thought Porky's was too wild, too crude, and doomed to flop. They nearly shed it. But test screenings told a different story. Teenagers were howling with laughter, quoting lines and demanding more. Suddenly, the studio had no choice. They went from doubters to cashing in on a cultural phenomenon.
Number 5.
Ah yes, the infamous locker room prank. Critics slammed it, parents protested it, and TV censors trimmed it. But director Bob Clark defended it, saying it wasn't meant to glorify immature behavior. It was meant to mock it. Whether you loved it or hated it, one thing is undeniable. That scene etched itself into teen comedy history.
Number 6.
Porky's walked a razor-thin line with censors. Its outrageous humor, suggestive jokes, and wild scenes pushed boundaries in a way few films dared at the time. And when it first hit the desks of ratings boards, there was real concern it would get slapped with a harsher rating, one that would have crippled its box office potential. The filmmakers had to trim certain shots and adjust bits of dialogue just to secure a more audience-friendly rating. Even then, it was still considered one of the boldest mainstream comedies of its era. This struggle with censors highlights a bigger point. The very things that almost got the movie banned were the things that made it unforgettable. The humor was raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic. If it had been watered down any further, it might have lost the edge that turned it into a cultural phenomenon. In the end, Porky survived the censorship gauntlet, but the scars of that battle only added to his rebellious reputation.
Number 7.
Every movie has those little quirks that audiences never forget. In Porky's, one of those quirks came from Dan Monahan, the actor who played the mischievous Pee-wee. His laugh, high-pitched, ridiculous, and completely over the top, became a character all on its own. Here's the kicker. That laugh wasn't scripted. It wasn't even an act. That was Dan Monahan's real laugh. During filming, his laugh derailed entire takes. The crew couldn't hold it together. Actors broke character, and scenes had to be restarted again and again because everyone behind the camera was doubled over. But instead of being a problem, it became one of the most iconic parts of the film. That uncontrollable laugh turned Pee-wee from just another teenage prankster into a character fans couldn't forget. It's a reminder that sometimes the best movie magic doesn't come from scripts or directors. It comes from an actor just being their authentic, hilarious self.
Number 8.
Few characters in Porky's are as unforgettable as Coach Balbricker, played by Nancy Parsons. Her no-nonsense delivery and deadpan reactions gave the movie some of its funniest and most iconic moments. But here's the thing, she almost turned the role down. Nancy Parsons wasn't a comedy actor. She was classically trained in drama. When she first read the script, especially the infamous locker room scene, she was horrified. At first glance, it didn't feel like the kind of role that would advance her career. It felt risky, maybe even embarrassing. But after talking with Bob Clark and understanding the tone he was aiming for, satire, exaggeration, and absurdity, she decided to take the leap. And thank goodness she did. Her serious, grounded performance made the outrageous scenes even funnier. Instead of playing it like a joke, she played it straight, and that contrast turned her into a comedy legend. In a movie filled with pranksters and chaos, Coach Balbricker stood out as both terrifying and hilarious. And it all came from Nancy Parsons' willingness to step outside her comfort zone and embrace the absurd.
Number 9.
Here's a wild one. After Porky's exploded in theaters, a Florida teacher came forward with a complaint that turned heads. He swore that one of the characters in the film was based directly on him, and he wasn't laughing. In fact, he threatened to sue for defamation. Now, think about the absurdity of this. A teacher watching the film, sitting through all the pranks and chaos, and suddenly thinking, hey, wait a second. That's me. He was convinced his likeness had been used to portray one of the less flattering authority figures. The filmmaker's response? Brutally simple. They basically said, if you see yourself in that role, that's on you. In other words, if the shoe fits, wear it. But don't blame us. Unsurprisingly, the lawsuit went nowhere. But the story spread like wildfire, adding to the film's growing reputation as a cultural troublemaker. It wasn't just audiences laughing, it was sparking debates, accusations, and even attempted lawsuits. And honestly, if a teacher is threatening legal action because he thinks he's been parodied, that's a sign the movie hit a little too close to home.
Number 10.
On the surface, Porky's looks like pure chaos. Pranks, fights, and teenagers stumbling through misadventures. But according to director Bob Clark, the movie had a deeper layer. At its core, he said, it was about teenage insecurity. That awkward stage where kids try desperately to act like adults, but have no idea what adulthood really means. Think about it. The boys in the film swagger around like they're tough, confident men. But the second they're confronted with real consequences, humiliation, or authority figures, they crumble. That's not just comedy, that's reality. It's every teenager trying to act grown up before they've figured out who they are. This layer of satire is what separates Porky's from being just another teen movie. Behind the outrageous laughs, it was making a point about how clumsy, embarrassing, and human growing up really is. It's why the movie resonates decades later. Audiences don't just remember the gags. They remember the truth underneath. Being a teenager feels like a war between wanting to be an adult and not having a clue how. And that's a feeling everyone can relate to.
Number 11.
Believe it or not, Porky's wasn't always called Porky's. The working title during production was simply Growing Up. Now, imagine walking past a movie theater in 1981 and seeing a poster that says Growing Up. Would you buy a ticket? Probably not. It sounds more like a slow, sentimental drama than a raucous comedy about swamp bars and high school hijinks. Fortunately, Bob Clark pushed for a change. He wanted the film named after the infamous bar that played such a central role in the story, Porky's. The second test audiences heard it, they remembered it. It was bold, weird, and catchy. Everything a title needs to stick in people's minds. The switch worked like magic. Suddenly, the movie had an identity. Porky's wasn't just another coming-of-age film. It was something wilder, louder, and more unforgettable. That single title change helped transform it into the comedy juggernaut we know today.
Number 12.
Before Porky's, teen movies leaned towards sweet romances, nostalgic dramas, or cautionary tales. Think sentimental coming-of-age stories. But after Porky's, everything shifted. The floodgates opened for outrageous, anything-goes teen comedies. Movies like Revenge of the Nerds, American Pie, and Superbad all trace part of their DNA back to Porky's. The formula was clear. Awkward teens plus ridiculous situations equals box office gold. What made it revolutionary was how unapologetic it was. It didn't try to sugarcoat teenage life or make it glamorous. It leaned into the embarrassing, messy parts, and audiences loved it. In a way, Porky's gave permission for comedy to get louder, raunchier, and riskier. Without it, the teen comedy landscape might look very different today. Instead of classics filled with chaos, we might have ended up with decades of overly sentimental growing up stories. And let's be real, where's the fun in that?
Number 13.
Before she became world famous as Samantha Jones on Sex and the City, actress Kim Cattrall was making waves in Porky's. She played the gym teacher with a not-so-secret side, and let's just say, audiences never forgot her performance. What made her role so memorable wasn't just the absurdity of the character, but the way she played it completely straight. Cattrall didn't act like she was in a goofy teen comedy. She delivered her lines with seriousness, which made the comedy land even harder. She later admitted in interviews that it was one of the strangest shoots of her career, but it also became one of her most defining. That small but unforgettable role launched her into the spotlight and set her on a path toward bigger opportunities. When you look back now, it's wild to think that before her glamorous days in New York City on HBO, she was sweating it out in a chaotic Florida gymnasium, proving that sometimes the strangest roles are the ones that build legends.
Number 14.
Hollywood has a long tradition of casting older actors to play high school students, and Porky's was no exception. In fact, nearly the entire cast was in their 20s, and a few were creeping up on 30. If you rewatch the movie today with that in mind, it's hilarious. Some of the students look more like substitute teachers trying to blend in with the kids. Critics joked about it at the time, but honestly, it worked. The energy, the humor, and the ridiculousness still came through. And let's be real, casting actual teenagers in some of those outrageous scenes would have been impossible. Having older actors gave the filmmakers room to push boundaries without breaking the rules. So while they weren't exactly believable high school sophomores, they sure delivered on the comedy.
Number 15.
Here's a piece of trivia you won't believe. In 1983, the world of Porky's actually made its way into the world of video games. That's right, there was an official Porky's game released by Atari. Players had to sneak past traps, avoid enemies, and make their way through bizarre obstacles. It was basically a chaotic maze of pranks and escapes, designed to capture the wild spirit of the film. But here's the kicker, the game was a flop. It was quickly pulled from shelves because it was considered too weird and too difficult. Still, in today's collector market, those rare cartridges are worth serious money. If you stumble across a copy at a garage sale, you might just be holding a little piece of comedy history worth hundreds of dollars. It's strange to think about, but Porky's wasn't just a movie. It briefly tried to be part of the early video game revolution.
Number 16.
Decades after the original film shook up the box office, shock jock radio legend Howard Stern tried to bring Porky's back to life. In the early 2000s, Stern acquired the rights and announced he was working on a modern reboot. He promised to keep the outrageous tone of the original, but update the humor for a new generation. Fans of Stern were curious. If anyone could capture that mix of chaos and comedy, it would have been him. Even Bob Clark, the original director, gave his blessing. Everything seemed set until tragedy struck. Clark's unexpected passing in 2007 brought the project to a halt. Without his guidance, the reboot stalled, and eventually, Stern admitted the project was dead. He later said, "No one had the guts to finish it right." And that's probably true. Rebooting Porky's would have been a massive challenge in the modern era. Some fans still wonder what it would have looked like, but for now, the legend of Stern's reboot remains just that, a what if in comedy history.
Number 17.
When a movie makes as much money as Porky's, Hollywood doesn't just sit back and relax. They look for sequels. And sure enough, the original film was followed by two follow-ups, Porky's 2, The Next Day, and Porky's Revenge. On paper, it made sense. Audiences loved the chaos of the first film, so why not give them more? But here's the truth, lightning rarely strikes twice. While the sequels had plenty of wild gags, they didn't capture the same magic. Critics tore them apart, and fans mostly shrugged. Today, most people barely remember remember the sequels even exist. They faded into the background, while the original Porky's remains the one everyone talks about. It's a perfect example of how sometimes a film doesn't need a franchise. It just needs one unforgettable entry to cement its legacy.
Number 18.
You'd never guess this one. After directing the outrageous, chaotic world of Porky's, filmmaker Bob Clark went on to make one of the most beloved family holiday films of all time, A Christmas Story. That's right, the same man who gave us swamp bars, locker room chaos, and outrageous pranks also gave us Ralphie, the Red Ryder BB gun, and the leg lamp in the window. It's almost impossible to believe the same director created two movies so different. One became a cult classic for comedy rebels. The other became a cozy holiday tradition watched every December. That's what you call range.
Number 19.
Not everyone embraced Porky's with open arms. In fact, the film was banned outright in Ireland and heavily edited in several other countries. On TV, some versions were cut by more than 20 minutes, stripping out entire scenes that censors deemed too much for audiences. But here's the funny part. Censoring the movie only made people want to see it more. Fans traded VHS tapes of the uncut version like it was forbidden treasure. The movie developed a second life underground, passed between friends as a kind of secret handshake. Instead of killing the film's popularity, censorship actually gave it cult status. People love what they're told they can't have, and Porky's became proof of that.
Number 20.
Of course, a movie as legendary as Porky's couldn't just fade quietly into the background. Shortly after the film hit theaters, one of the cast members started getting mysterious prank calls in their hotel room. The callers? Fans of the movie. And what were they doing? Repeating the exact prank lines from the film back to the actors themselves. At first, it was confusing, but when the calls kept coming, the cast realized something important. This movie had officially entered pop culture history. When people are using your own jokes against you in real life, you know the film has gone beyond being just a movie. It's become part of the culture.
Bonus.
Here's the final twist. Porky's was never supposed to be a massive cultural touchstone. It started as a small, scrappy comedy inspired by Bob Clark's teenage memories in Florida. No one expected it to become one of the most successful Canadian films of all time, launch actors into stardom, spark censorship debates, and influence an entire genre. But that's exactly what happened. The movie was wild, messy, and chaotic, and that's why audiences loved it. It wasn't polished, it wasn't careful, and it certainly wasn't safe, but it was unforgettable. And that's why, decades later, we're still talking about it. If you enjoyed diving into these wild behind-the-scenes stories, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more movie deep dives, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one.